Hi, my name is Gilson Lee, and I will be discussing the theory Dramatism, um, created by Kenneth Burke. There's five major points of dramatism that I learned and figured out. One is the act, which this describes what was done. This is pretty much how you act on being dramatic towards someone. So that's a big setting point in the theory dramatism, because if you act just horribly and way too dramatic towards someone, they won't want to respond and they won't want to even listen to you. So that's a big part of being dramatic as well. To the scene, obviously, and where and when you are dramatic and communication or use dramatism. Say if I decided to go talk to my ex-girlfriend in a public manner in front of everyone, being dramatic, approaching her, that's unfair to her. And the scene is probably, for me, would be the biggest part of responding to someone if they were to be dramatic or use dramatism towards me in communication. Obviously, I wouldn't want to talk about, something with my parents that I would want to talk about with my roommate. Um, so that's the biggest part of dramatism to me, is the scene. Three is the agent. This is the description of the decision maker. So, say someone who approached you in a dramatic fashion didn't have the best reputation, say it was violent or something, that affects the way you would respond to someone approaching you with dramatism. Um, Also, there's the purpose, and that's what's the motivation? Why are you doing this? Why are you communicating in this manner? What is your motive? There's always a motive in communication to why you approach someone. There's always a motive, whether it's wanting food, whether it's needing advice, whether it's anything. There's always a motivation. What was learned from me, mainly through researching this theory all semester, were that there's three main aspects in communication and dramatism. They're used to form social hierarchies that are very important to the theory. And the first is superiority. My dad could be very dramatic towards me by giving me advice, whereas I could be dramatic towards him because he's superior to me. He's my dad. He raised me. He has the right to raise his voice or be dramatic with me in any fashion he's trying to do to construct me. The second is inferiority. Um, you know, if I were to go up to a 5-year-old who's riding their bike too fast down the street and I yelled at him, that's me being superior to an inferior responder, which is a huge in all communication, because a lot of ways people communicate is what stance they have, how important they are. Like LeBron James, if he came over here to talk to me about basketball, that's way more superior than, say, if my friend came up and gave me some basketball tips, or President Trump talking about coronavirus or something like that. I would trust that because he's superior to everyone in our country over, it's one of my friends talking about it. The third is equality. Everyone has to treat everyone with how they would want to be treated. Equality and inequality are very important in all communication as well. It may occur when there's differences as similarities in opinion. It can occur between different socioeconomic classes. Equality in general is important, but especially in communication, because if you want to be a good communicator, you have to communicate the way that you would want someone to communicate with you. The likes and dislikes, for me, I like how important being dramatic is. It's a very important way to communicate, and that's why I chose the theory, because, you know, if we couldn't be dramatic and emphasize our emotions, how could our species communicate? Burke's right. Kenneth Burke's right. This world would be nowhere without dramatism, and he stresses that, and always continues to stress that, because he's right. It's just you have to put emphasis on a lot of your emotions if you want to get your point across. Um, and dramatism is a big reason for that. The dislikes. I don't like how the abuse part of it. People abuse dramatism, be dramatic. Like Burke said. Equality and superiority is very important, and people who are superior to other people abuse this communication theory, whether it's through physical abuse or verbal abuse or racism or anything of that nature. Superiority can basically get away with anything if you're communicating without any error, and that's a big part of our society and how we communicate. And I dislike that part of it, even though that's one of the main parts of dramatism. It fits the whole society aspect of our world. I like how, with in today's world, it's very politically correct. I feel like as a world, back in the '60s, people were definitely abusing dramatism more than they were now, because with racism, you could go up to an African American and say anything you wanted to say and get away with it. Now you have Twitter, you have social media, you have you can't get away with saying things by abusing dramatism. And I also like that part of the theory. Future research has a lot to do with how our society evolves. Like I said, 1960s, you could say and do a lot more things and emphasize emotion and dramatism way more than you can now, per se, without getting in trouble, I guess. Because on social media, if you're dramatic and approach someone with emphasis that's not good emphasis, and you post something on social media that you shouldn't have posted that was very dramatic and over the top, you could get in a lot of trouble. You could lose jobs. You could not get a job. It could ruin your reputation. It could ruin your family's reputation. And also, another way of analyzing theory is corrigibility, which means the persistence that no matter how right everyone thinks the theory may be, there might be some sort of flow or disconfirmation somewhere along the lines, which is very true the more I researched it, because corrigibility is very important. It's basically the fine line between what you can and can't say. And yes, communicating is an everyday thing, everyday action, but you also have to have that fine line. And dramatism, Kenneth Burke always stressed, the equality, the superiority, the inferiority, the act, the scene, the agent, the agents, the purpose. Those are the guidelines you need to go by if you are to use, dramatism and emphasize your emotions. But I really liked this theory because being dramatic can be a very, very good thing in communication, but it can also be a bad thing. It depends on how you approach yourself to other people to communicate in a dramatic fashion. Kenneth Burke gives out all these guidelines that you're supposed to go by. If you stick to those guidelines, it can be very important and very useful. But if you abuse it and use superiority over inferiority, that's not how you're supposed to use this theory. This theory will be around forever. A lot of theories will be around forever, but I think this one is one of the most important theories. And I said why earlier, just because it's so important as to how you express yourself to another individual. And I'm glad I chose this theory, because I can take this for the rest of my life. And if I'm ever over dramatic, I can be like, okay, talk to Ken or search Kenneth Burke on Google and reevaluate what you're about to say. He's an amazing, inventing this theory and coming up with this theory is world changing. I can't express enough on how much this whole semester has taught me with this theory, because Kenneth Burke, as smart as he was and as important as he is to our society now, he made a lot of good points, and I will take this with me throughout my everyday life. And again, the importance of using this theory correctly is important to